Hey, can you find a water bottle for me?
Something so simple.
Hi, Max Brantley with the Arkansas Times on Monday, July the 2nd. Well, news today includes this. The 8th Circuit U.S. Court of Appeals in St. Louis today dismissed Judge Wendell Griffen's lawsuit against the Arkansas Supreme Court that said his constitutional rights had been abridged by the Supreme Court, saying he could no longer hear death penalty cases. The appeals court said that he had not lost any First Amendment speech or religious rights by this, that he could still speak freely and practice religious freely, but the state is free to set rules on what judges can and cannot hear in their courtrooms and can take into account statements that they may have made that might make them appear to be less than impartial. Griffen, you may know, made a decision that affected the use of an execution drug the same day he participated in an anti-death penalty rally, and the Supreme Court of Arkansas took him off all death penalty cases for the future as a result of that action. He may yet appeal the 8th Circuit's Court of Appeal decision. Medical marijuana is going to be in the news today. The State Medical Marijuana Commission is going to meet at 4 p.m. Good news for those who've been kept out of the meetings. They meet in a small room, and a lot of people have been interested. It's going to be live streamed today at a YouTube channel. You can find the link at arkansasblog.com. They're going to talk about dispensary permits. Next week, they're going to take up the hotly controversial matter of the cultivation permits, over which there's been a great deal of debate on whether the process was fair or not. We do not yet have, but expect by the end of the day, a ruling from Federal Judge Christine Baker on Planned Parenthood's appeal to keep in place an injunction against the state's enforcement of an anti-abortion law that would put Planned Parenthood's clinics out of business in Arkansas. In Fayetteville and Little Rock, they dispense pills that are given to women in the first 9 weeks of pregnancy that create a miscarriage. If the law takes effect, these clinics would go out of business because they don't have arrangements with doctors who have hospital admitting privileges. Doctors are afraid to do an agreement with Planned Parenthood because of threats from the so-called pro-life end of the abortion debate. More news late Friday that we didn't get around to when we recorded this. It's worth mentioning now. There was a felony charge in state court against a former DHS employee and former employee of Preferred Family Health Care over Medicaid fraud. And this finally led Governor Asa Hutchinson to do something that he was weeks late in doing, and that was to suspend Preferred Family Health Care from the state Medicaid program. It gets some $43 million a year in state money to provide mental health services around the state. This is going to be a problem, both for the employees and for the clients they serve, but it was time to make a change. This is an organization that grew fat over the illegal activities of a number of people, not necessarily everybody who works there, but certainly they'd gotten advantages because of crooked legislators and lobbyists, and it was time for the state to stand up. So happens they have a new lobbying firm. So happened that lobbying firm has a leader whose daughter works for the governor. I don't think that had anything to do with it. Don't know why it took him so long to act, but act he finally did. And we need to say a good word for Attorney General Leslie Rutledge, who doesn't always get good words on this show. She said that a state legislator, Mickey Gates of Hot Springs, a Republican who's been charged with 6 felony counts of failing to file income tax returns, should resign. You may remember that Asa Hutchinson says, oh, we need to let due process take its course. And of course he's entitled to due process under the law on the felony charges, but I don't think the state legislature should be home to somebody who doesn't file his income tax returns like the rest of us. Good for Leslie Rutledge, not so good for Asa Hutchinson. There's some concern among Democrats that there will eventually be a resignation by Gates, but only after they've worked out a tricky little deal where they can claim he moved or something and qualify for a way the Republicans to put somebody on the ballot in time for November to run against the Democrat that's in that race right now. Governor Asa Hutchinson today appointed J.D. Neely of Camden to a vacancy on the State Game and Fish Commission. This is shocking news. A well-off white man appointed the Game and Fish Commission. I think we've had one black member and a couple of short-term interim appointments of women in the nearly 100-year history of the commission. It just wouldn't do to put a woman on the State Game and Fish Commission. They don't hunt and fish, do they? Big crowds at the state capitol over the weekend for the Keep Families Together rally. It was one of hundreds around the country of people protesting the treatment of immigrants by Donald Trump. There was a lack of violence at these things, I might say, although there were some attempts to intimidate people by messages carried by some people who attended in opposition. In Alabama, somebody pulled a gun on an Episcopal priest during a prayer down there, but we had a much more peaceful weekend, but it shows people do still care. It is something to resist. By the latest report today, there are 11,000 children unaccompanied children being detained in youth prisons by U.S. officials around the country for the crime of trying to get into the United States and flee unsafe situations in the country they came from. Good enough for me to resist. I'm Max Brantley. I'll be back tomorrow.